On this final episode of Wild Woman, I'd like to proudly introduce a woman whose spirit is joyful and loving, and yet tenacious and determined. This is Julie.
So the words that come to me from my childhood just really feel like important to touch on, like the sense of celebration that was in my household. Celebrating every holiday, every birthday, things were very special. Like truly honoring each person in the family, and every accomplishment. So there's a sense of pride, a sense of really support and love. Was really prominent in my household, and just a sense of expanded joy, whatever that feels is like a child who is super joyful and really open to expressing that joy. And it was just a beautiful environment to grow up in. At the same time, the dynamics in the family, being the youngest, a little bit of competing for resources with my older sister, and often that's developed into, throughout my time, a sense of being different, and a sense of being kind of the one in the family that has a little bit of a different perspective, or a little bit of seeing differently, like the black sheep, or the wild child, or the flower child, the hippie person who's a little bit more different and free. And so both of those were very present, and that definitely shaped how I was and how I moved through life at a young age. Just really being super ambitious, super studious, the person who really loved school, really loved to learn, and that's still very true. I'm such a student at heart. With that, I was the first person in my family to go to college and get other higher education, because I just always have had that drive. But one thing that also helped shape me was finding dance. So I started gymnastics when I was 8 years old, and right away I knew that I did not like it. Just some of the things that they were saying about my body, just you're too tall, you're too long, and then just the competitive nature of it didn't feel good. And it wasn't until I was doing a floor routine, which is obviously the most open apparatus, that a parent told my mom that, oh, she's really graceful, she should be a dancer. And that's when I discovered dance at the age of 10. Because I started so young, and the nature of where I grew up and where I grew up dancing, it was a competition dance nature, and that shaped me in many ways as well. One of them is not noticing until later in life how much the impact of being a 13-year-old girl standing on a stage in front of 3 judges really affected me. They were the ones who determined my worthiness of a certain point system, or a certain level, or metal color. Until later, kind of this time in my life, where I realized actually how damaging that was, and it makes so much sense how my life has completely gone in another direction. Moving away from that place into a little bit more of holding space without judgment feels really important. Then dance continued to also be the path that kept calling me. So in college, I originally, as I said, I was the first person in my family to go to college, so I shot for the stars, and I was like, I'm gonna be a doctor, I'm gonna be a lawyer. And then quickly realized that just didn't feel right. There was a part of me that really wanted to help and really wanted to serve, but I didn't really know what that looked like yet. And at the same time, I really love dance still. and I really wanted to explore that avenue. And the world of modern dance called to me, where it was like literally the opposite of ballet. So if ballet is like up and kind of trying to defy gravity, modern is all about earthing and like getting into your own weight and your own gravity. And I still continued to study ballet and I studied technique, but it also felt like an opening of just like, who am I as an artist? Who am I really as a dancer? And it allowed me to ask those questions from the inside. So like finding this place of like this artistic voice and this artistic expression from the inside out. And at the same time, like really asking the questions of, well, what is this other part that I mentioned that feels like it needs to serve? Like, what does that look like? And it wasn't until I started working with individuals with Parkinson's disease that I truly found a sense of like marriage or union between those two places, where how can I really express myself as an artist and dance and move and facilitate and create an increased quality of life for others. And it led me down to the discovery of dance movement therapy and how can we actually use dance as a healing modality in people's lives.
Finding a connection to our creative work or loved ones helps to give our lives a sense of purpose, and by combining both our creative passions and the passion to help others we care for, gives our sense of purpose that much more meaning and illumination.
Following the path led me to Chicago, moving from Florida to Chicago at the mere age of 21, 22, I think, yeah. So still super young, and then not really knowing the kind of the scope of what awaits me on the other side of this work. So like both the light and the shadow of the work. And by work I mean like when I'm going into people's lives and going into people's like intimate space of healing and what that means and what that feels like as a therapist. So my experience in grad school was both intense and really eye-opening, and just like a huge mirror and reflection for my own healing. I believe that you can only go as deep as you've met yourself, because we essentially like walk down the path together, guiding, but I can't do the work for them. And at the same time, wherever they're willing to dive, I have to dive to meet them, and I have to be willing to go there within myself. And this all kind of came to ahead again with the memory of my first like real full-time job, which was working at a residential center for women who are recovering from addiction and eating disorders and mood disorders. And usually at the root of these imbalances was a traumatic experience. And so being in that environment for as long as I was really formative, again, eye-opening, and really kind of a mirror, a reflection of my own healing that I still needed to do and came up at the time. How that affected me was just an acknowledgement and kind of understanding a little bit more of what the feminine wound is, because we were working with women primarily, or women identifying individuals. I noticed a lot of themes, and the themes included a sense of victimhood, a sense of having something taken from them, whether it's their body, whether it's their sacred space, whether it's boundaries, whether it's a sense of innocence that was taken or that they subconsciously or unconsciously gave away. And so the process is a sense of reclaiming and knowing like those external parts haven't really gone anywhere. We just really have to know where they are and recognize them and embody them again, or just uncover and remember those parts and kind of repattern and remember the power that we already have. Being in that space for so long naturally brought up shadows within myself that I hadn't acknowledged before, like being in a household of so much light and positivity and love, which was so beautiful. But it's like, oh, there's actual darkness in the world. There's actual horrible things that happen to people, and that experiences that people do not deserve. Witnessing people in their pain in and of itself is like a sense of really deep kind of, I don't want to say trauma, but there is something that's called secondary trauma, where you can notice what comes up for you when you are processing other people's trauma. It's really important to like be aware of that. And for me, I mean, things were coming up that questioned about my relationship to so many things, my relationship to the masculine, my relationship to my own body, my relationship to how I approach loving relationships. I was also in a relationship that felt like I was continually lowering my worth and my level of respect just by honestly claiming it and owning it for myself as a sense of fantasy that I was creating that was very different than the reality of the situation. And because of that, that dynamic, it felt very toxic. Thinking what love is, esoterically and kind of on a bigger scale, but then what was the actual reality that was happening, and being able to like drop into that and being able to be like, these are the facts, this is what's actually happened, versus like what am I envisioning, or what is my projection into the future, and really coming to terms with both the part of me that loves to, again, that part that really loves to celebrate and expand and like look at the bright side, versus like, well, this is actually what's happening, and this is like the literal physical feedback that I'm getting as a sense of where my like yes, my sense of yes and expansion is met with like a boundary or a no, and like what that feels like, and that part of me that feels deflated. And so because of that, it was like engaging in this relationship that felt toxic, because I wasn't able to fully open, and I wasn't able to fully allow myself to receive the love, because I wasn't giving myself the love, because I was like compromising the whole time. I was compromising because in my mind it was up here, but in reality it was like in the no space. I learned how to receive a no. I learned how to give a no. I learned what it felt like in my body, and I was able to be with those places in myself that felt disappointed and felt lost, and I had to parent those parts again, those parts of myself that felt like an inner child that was like, oh, I didn't get what I want, you know, that kind of thing. And those are real, and I had to like show those parts of myself unconditional love, and allowing myself to really define what it is that I actually want. As a woman, it is really empowering to like recognize our desire, recognize what we want, and to believe that we deserve it. We believe, and like to believe that we can be met there, whether it is love, whether it is a career, whether it is a family that you're creating. What is it truly that you want, and do you believe that you deserve it?
Women were heavily taught to compromise. Femininity is often equated with nurturing, selflessness, and surrender. And while although these qualities have their place, are they really our dominant characteristics? What about autonomy, strength, and knowing? Can we encompass these characteristics into our ideas of femininity?
Needless to say, those experiences have led me to a place where I am now, and how I've gotten there feels like a slow unfolding of like what I call shadow work, where it's the darkness or the shadow that is not conscious and it's not in my awareness yet, where it was like from a deep place that was going on the entire time, but I had no idea that these things were at play until really after I left this job and after I left that relationship, where it was like, oh, this is heavy, this is dark, this is different than the light feeling that I was used to. And so naturally, as a healer, I was very curious about it, and it was a really huge lesson in allowing myself to go there and allowing myself to really what feels like die, like metaphorically a couple times. So very much a sense of a phoenix kind of rising from struggle, rising from a death, rising from the ashes, and a sense of transformation. Some things that have helped, you know, shaving my head a few times, getting a couple tattoos, definitely helps really claim, like, hey, I'm going through something. This feels like, hey, I'm acknowledging the pain, I'm acknowledging the difference, the change in energy. This is not who I was. I'm going to change physically how I look, and actually feeling different in my body are like all indications of like, this is real. Part of the emergence that I am stepping into and stepping forward, stepping out of and stepping into, is where I am now and the work that I'm doing now. And it very much feels influenced and informed and shaped by all of these life experiences. I do get the sense that my soul has a mission. My soul has a purpose and a path for being here. And like working at this center, holding space, like healing space for women, being a confidant for women who have gone through loss and gone through pain, and my own sense of femininity as a woman has continued to reveal this theme of like my mission for being here feels like to really empower the feminine voice and body on this earth and be the leader and be a leader in that uprising of the feminine energy and what that means. What does it mean to have feminine energy, and no matter what body you're in, how can we express that and find balance in a total masculine and like the old paradigm of masculine energy being dominant and not one energy being dominant over the other, but how can we truly find not only a rising of the feminine, but more oneness and more sacred union of the two energies? How can the masculine honor the feminine? How can the feminine honor the masculine? And how we have both within. That feels like on a big scale what I'm here to do. And what that manifests in roles is still continuing my work as a dance movement therapist and bringing people into their bodies, helping people create a sense of safety within their bodies, and at the same time creating an energetic healing space. Another role that has recently emerged is a sense of director and curator and producer of an artistic venture. So as a dance therapist, I've always felt like the creative side of this career is so important to stay nourished in the work that we do. And so that part has never kind of gone away from me. I've always kept it close because I just have always known how important it is. And so there was an old story that I can be a dancer, but I can't be a choreographer. That feels like not me, or I can't be a director because I'm always a supportive role. And that in and of itself is a limiting belief. So I kind of broke through that belief and stepped into another place of like, hey, I I do enjoy creating. I do enjoy holding space for others. I do enjoy making dances. I enjoy bringing people together in community. I enjoy holding a space for transformative stories to be shared. And I enjoy sharing that with community and creating a space for people to share. And so this recent project called She Wolf, was a culmination of all of those roles and being able to really bring more of myself than I've ever really been able to bring before into one space. And one of the things that was also like a fuel to this confirmation of like, this is what I'm here to do, was the finding and reading of this book, Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I just remember sitting in a cafe in California when I was like first opening the book, reading the first chapter and just feeling like an expansion, just like so much energy in my body. Just like, I remember looking around like, does everybody else feel this, or am I alone? And just feeling so excited and lit up and turned on by the idea that women have, and humans really have, a connection to the wild woman archetype, and this sense of like primal, instinctual nature that is very powerful, very creative, and this is really who we are, and everything else that is kind of layered on top is just a costume or something that we put on. But how can we come back to the sense of raw, vulnerable power was just a question that I had, and I'm continued to be driven by. And it started to manifest in like, oh wow, I'm so inspired by this book. I'm so inspired by its teachings. It's time for me to now share, and it's time for me to continue this research, but now in community.
James Hillman suggests that books arrive synchronistically at key moments, that they shape the course of our lives. Julie began guiding workshops in the spirit of connecting to and understanding what the wild woman archetype can mean to each individual. The process and progress of her work led to the production and direction of her show, She Wolf.
So She Wolf is, I would call it an embodied exploration of the wild woman archetype and everything that goes along with that archetype involves honoring and acknowledging and being with our primal nature and our instincts, and our capacity for healing, and our capacity for transformation, and our way of being in the world as women, as people who identify as feminine energy. And the project feels like a platform that's created for people who wouldn't normally be able to share those stories and wouldn't normally be able to share their gifts in an artistic, creative way. Naturally, because I'm a dancer, I'm drawn more towards dance as an art form, and I am open to other artistic expression, because creativity in and of itself is one of our senses of primal power. But the project is an exploration, an artistic exploration of these archetypes and these energies, and a way for not only the people who are involved in the show to experience the healing that comes from that, but also to share on a broader scale in order to create a sense of universality and create a sense of unity and unity consciousness, that my story, including all the suffering, including all the pain and all the joy and all of the layers of vulnerability, can be understood and witnessed and seen in a compassionate space that is non-judgmental and really truly empowering and safe to share. I'm very grateful to kind of notice, like, going into these stories of my past and like reflecting on my life, like seeing how far I've come from those places and no longer feeling like there's so much emotional charge with those stories and with those experiences, because I truly am able to live more in the present. I'm able to kind of integrate those stories into who I am today, and seeing how they've shaped me and being grateful for the gifts that they've given me, and like truly believing that I deserve those gifts, and like truly seeing like what I'm here to do, like my purpose and path is like really clear. And even if the path changes, it's like trusting the path. Like whatever the path is, it's like there, and like really trusting in the universe, my universe, whatever you want to call it. I use many different words for it, but it's really just this space right here. You know, like in yoga we call it the electromagnetic field. In some spiritual practices they call it the aura, but it's really my world, my space that I am just trusting will give me messages, will give me the next kind of impulse to move from. The vision of the yellow brick road that Dorothy's down, you just follow the golden road, follow the yellow brick road, and you have the Emerald City at the end. But the key, here's the key and the secret to me, is the Emerald City is not out there. The Emerald City is here already, and that's what you have to kind of believe. And that's so corny, but it's so true.
Julie leads her life with a passionate fire which is so pure and luminous. It truly lights up wherever she stands. She is gifted in her ability to meet her clients in healing, while being able to see her own reflections and process that creatively. I feel so fortunate to have become connected to such a beautiful woman. Julie is the person to have brought Women Who Run with the Wolves into my life, which has inspired this series and my pursuit to complete my master's in analytical psychology. Although this is the last episode of this Wild Woman series, it certainly feels like this is just the beginning of my work. I don't know if I can ever thank the women in this series enough for supporting my vision and allowing me to tell and share their stories. My gratitude is infinite for these women, as well as for anyone who watched these episodes. I am immeasurably excited for what the future holds and my pursuit to uplift and understand the psychology of the feminine. Until next time.